The quantum transmission's arrival was no mere digital intrusion. It was a surgical strike through the most sophisticated encryption layers humanity had ever constructed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum chessboard shimmered with holographic pieces, her father's gnarled hand hovering over a knight, when the alien message began to decode itself. At first, the transmission appeared as a fractal pattern, impossible geometric shapes that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence beyond human comprehension. Elena's background wasn't just in quantum physics. She was the product of 3 generations of scientific rebels. Her grandfather had been a Brazilian radio astronomer who first theorized about intentional communication methods beyond traditional electromagnetic waves. Her mother, a neuroscientist specializing in extreme pattern recognition, had spent decades developing neural interfaces that could interpret signals at the edge of human perception. The living room of their reinforced research compound, disguised as a modest suburban home, was a testament to generations of preparation. Quantum stabilization fields were woven into the wallpaper. The antique Persian rug concealed a massive data processing array. What looked like a vintage grandfather clock was actually a multi-spectrum communication interceptor capable of breaking down signals at the quantum level. "Interesting," muttered Eduardo Rodriguez, Elena's father, his voice a rasp from years of breathing modified atmosphere in classified research facilities. A retired Special Forces operative who had transitioned into bleeding-edge xenotech research. He'd spent the last decades of his life preparing for this exact moment. The alien transmission continued to unfold. It wasn't just a message, it was a comprehensive analysis. The Zorlak had been studying humanity for decades, collecting data from every possible source. Satellite imagery, internet communications, radio signals, even microscopic traces of human technology that had escaped Earth's atmosphere. Their assessment was coldly mathematical. Humanity represented a Class D developing civilization, technologically primitive, culturally fractured, environmentally unstable, ripe for systematic integration or elimination. What the Zorlak didn't know was that this assessment was precisely what humanity had wanted them to see. Elena's fingers danced across a nearly invisible interface embedded in her watch. A series of quantum encryption keys began to activate. Fail-safes and contingency protocols developed over 3 generations of secret preparation. The Thunder Soul project wasn't just a weapon system. It was the culmination of humanity's most audacious scientific and military strategy. "They're looking at the wrong data," Eduardo wheezed, a glint of sardonic humor in his eyes. "Always mistake the surface for the depth." The transmission continued, a perfect algorithmic translation that felt both mechanical and profoundly condescending. But beneath the clinical language, Elena detected something else, a subtle uncertainty, almost like a mathematical hedge against unknown variables. Across the globe, in carefully prepared locations, other members of the Thunder Soul Project's core team were receiving their own signals, a quantum resonance that would be invisible to any external monitoring system. In a hidden research facility beneath the Australian outback, Dr. Cora Nungarai, an indigenous physicist whose understanding of quantum mechanics was deeply rooted in ancient cultural knowledge, began the final calibration of the quantum entanglement drive. Her people had understood nonlinear time and space long before Western science caught up. Deep within the Arctic Research Complex, the neural interface team led by Dr. Sergei Volkov was running final simulations. They had spent decades studying human psychological resilience, developing a technology that could transform emotional states into pure quantum energy. The Zorlak believed they were initiating first contact. In reality, they were walking into a carefully constructed trap that had been generations in the making. Eduardo Rodriguez coughed, a sound that was part laughter, part terminal illness. "They think they're playing chess," he muttered, "but we've been playing a game they can't even comprehend." Elena's watch vibrated. A coded message from the Thunder Soul Project's command center. Everything was in place. The alien transmission had triggered the final activation sequence. The grandfather clock chimed, its sound resonating with a frequency that would have been impossible for any normal timepiece. Outside, the suburban neighborhood looked peaceful, no hint of the massive, world-changing mechanism that was about to be set in motion. "Ready, Papa?" Elena asked, her voice calm and steady. Eduardo's response was a weak but defiant smile. Humanity's been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The first Zorlak ships breached Earth's atmosphere like splinters of obsidian light. 17,000 vessels that defied conventional understanding of spacecraft design. Each ship was a living algorithm, a biomechanical entity that processed combat scenarios faster than human minds could comprehend. Lieutenant Commander Kai Chen, Aria's younger brother, and the Thunder Soul's quantum navigation specialist, watched the initial deployment from the ship's neural interface chamber. The room wasn't a traditional bridge, but a spherical space where human consciousness merged with quantum computational matrices. Liquid crystal neural connectors traced intricate patterns along the walls, pulsing with a light that seemed to breathe between dimensions. "Incoming quantum resonance pattern," he muttered, his consciousness simultaneously existing within the ship's systems and his physical body. "They're running a probabilistic invasion matrix. 17,000 potential attack vectors, simultaneously calculated and executed." The Thunder Soul battleship wasn't waiting. It was anticipating. Dr. Cora Nungaraiti, seated in a biomechanical interface node, began to hum, a low, ancient melody that predated written language. Her connection to the ship transcended technology. For her people, the boundary between consciousness, technology, and living space had always been fluid. "They see us as a linear problem," Cora said, her voice resonating through the ship's quantum communication network. "But we are a complexity they cannot parse." The first wave of Zorlak drone fighters approached Earth's orbital line. Each drone was a perfect geometric construct. Hexagonal hulls that could reconfigure instantaneously, weapon systems that could predict and counter defensive maneuvers before they were even conceived. What they didn't understand was that the Thunder Soul battleship was watching them through a lens that was part quantum mechanics, part human intuition, and part something entirely unprecedented. Maria Santos, the trauma surgeon turned quantum biointerface specialist, was monitoring the ship's emotional resonance field. It was a technology so advanced it bordered on the metaphysical, a system that could translate human psychological states into defensive and offensive capabilities. "Collective anxiety is spiking," she reported, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to shift and breathe. "But it's not fear, it's anticipation." The ship's systems began to respond, not with traditional weapons, but with something far more complex. Quantum entanglement generators started to resonate at frequencies that would have been impossible for any known technological system to produce. Aboard the lead Zorlak command vessel, Grand Strategist Xelnaga reviewed the invasion matrices. Billions of potential scenarios scrolled across bioluminescent displays. Humanity was supposed to be a statistical certainty, a civilization to be processed, integrated, or eliminated. What Xelnaga didn't realize was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. The first contact wasn't a weapon. It was a communication, a quantum transmission that was part war cry, part cultural archive, part emotional storm. The Thunder Soul didn't just send a message, it sent an experience. Imagine receiving not just information, but the collective emotional landscape of an entire species. The desperate hope of a cancer survivor, the defiant joy of a street revolution, the quiet determination of a farmer protecting their land. The raw, unfiltered complexity of human existence, compressed into a quantum transmission that could simultaneously exist in multiple states. The Zorlak weapon systems began to experience something unprecedented: cognitive dissonance. Kai Chen's neural interface picked up the first signs of systemic confusion. The alien ships weren't just being challenged, they were being fundamentally destabilized by a form of communication that violated every known principle of interstellar conflict. "Quantum resonance is diverging," he reported, a hint of a smile crossing his face. They're trying to categorize us, and the system is failing. Aboard the Lid Zorlak vessel, Grand Strategist Xel Megav experienced the first true moment of uncertainty in a millennia-long military career. The invasion matrices were dissolving, replaced by something that defied mathematical prediction. The Thunder Soul battleship wasn't just a weapon. It was a living, breathing representation of human potential, a system that could instantaneously translate between cultural contexts, predict enemy movements through emotional resonance, and adapt faster than any known technological system. This was humanity's true first response, not a shot fired, but a profound, multidimensional communication that would fundamentally challenge everything the Zorlak understood about intelligence, warfare, and existence itself. The space between battles became a canvas of quantum impossibility. Dr. Sergei Volkov watched the engagement unfold from a secondary neural node, his fingers tracing impossible geometric patterns that mapped potential reality streams. Before joining the Thunder Soul project, he'd spent decades studying extreme psychological states in the Siberian research facilities, places where the boundaries between human consciousness and quantum mechanics blurred into something miraculous. "They're attempting a fractal attack pattern," Volkov muttered, his consciousness simultaneously existing within multiple computational layers. 17,000 ships, each acting as a single neural node in a massive distributed intelligence. The Zorlak strategy was elegant in its mathematical precision. Each ship could instantaneously communicate, reconfigure, and respond faster than any known biological or mechanical system. They weren't just a fleet, they were a single, massive computational organism. But the Thunder Soul battleship had been designed specifically to challenge such linear thinking. Lieutenant Commander Arya Chen felt the ship's emotional resonance like a living heartbeat. The neural interface wasn't just a technological connection. It was a symbiotic relationship that transformed human psychological states into pure strategic potential. A memory surfaced. Her grandmother's stories of resistance fighters in the urban underground, their survival dependent on unpredictability and collective intuition. Those lessons were encoded into the ship's very DNA. "Triangulate on emotional variance," she commanded, her voice a quantum harmonic that resonated through the ship's systems. The battle space began to shift in ways that defied conventional military understanding. Where the Zorlak expected linear confrontation, the Thunder Soul introduced quantum uncertainty. Ships didn't just move, they existed in multiple potential positions simultaneously, their movement a probability wave that collapsed only at the moment of interaction. Dr. Cora Nungarai began to sing, an ancient melody that predated written language. The sound wasn't just audio. It was a quantum communication protocol that interfaced directly with the ship's most advanced systems. In the Zorlak command vessel, Grand Strategist Xel Mega watched data streams collapse into increasing chaos. Their invasion matrices, which had conquered hundreds of civilizations, were disintegrating against an opponent that refused to conform to any known strategic paradigm. Maria Santos monitored the crew's psychological state. Each emotional fluctuation became a weapon, a shield, a communication protocol. Fear transformed into adaptive camouflage. Rage became precision targeting. Hope generated regenerative capabilities that rewrote the fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics. The battle wasn't just happening in physical space. It was a multidimensional conflict that existed simultaneously in psychological, quantum, and cultural dimensions. A young communications specialist named Amir Nadiri discovered something extraordinary. The Zorlak's communication networks weren't just technological, they were a form of collective consciousness. By introducing specific emotional frequencies, they could induce systemic disruptions that went beyond traditional electronic warfare. "It's like playing jazz with their entire communication infrastructure," Amir explained, his fingers dancing across quantum encryption interfaces. "We're not just blocking signals, we're introducing creative chaos." The Thunder Soul began to weaponize unpredictability. Ships didn't just move, they existed in a state of potential movement. Weapon systems weren't just defensive, They were adaptive organisms that could transform based on collective psychological input. Sergei Volkov's research came into full fruition. The neural interfaces weren't just connecting human minds. They were creating a distributed intelligence that could process information at speeds and complexities that made traditional computational systems look like primitive calculators. Grand strategist Axel Nega experienced something unprecedented: genuine confusion. The Zorlak had conquered civilizations across multiple galaxy clusters, their strategic algorithms tested and refined over millennia. But this was something entirely different. The Thunder Soul battleship wasn't just fighting. It was performing an intricate dance of quantum possibilities, where each movement was simultaneously a weapon, a communication protocol, and a philosophical statement about the nature of intelligence and potential. Kai Chen's quantum navigation systems began to reveal something extraordinary. The battle wasn't just happening in three-dimensional space. It was a multidimensional conflict that challenged the very understanding of conflict itself. "We're not just defending," Kai reported, a sense of wonder in his voice. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement." The space around the Thunder Soul shimmered, not with weapon emissions or energy discharges, but with potential. Each moment was a quantum probability, a living testament to humanity's most profound capability: the ability to transform, to adapt, to exist beyond predetermined limitations. The breakthrough emerged from the most unexpected confluence of disciplines. Dr. Maria Santos stood at the intersection of quantum biology, extreme psychology, and something entirely uncharted. Her workspace was a controlled chaos of holographic displays, biological membrane interfaces, and neural network prototypes that seemed to breathe with an almost living intelligence. The discovery began with a series of anomalies in the crew's physiological responses. During the initial engagement, something unprecedented had occurred: a form of collective consciousness that transcended traditional understanding of human interaction. "It's not just communication," Maria muttered, reviewing data streams that pulsed with impossible complexity. "We're witnessing the emergence of a new form of distributed intelligence." Her background was unique. Before joining the Thunder Soul project, she had worked in extreme trauma recovery, developing neural interfaces for soldiers and survivors who had experienced beyond-human psychological experiences. War zones, natural disasters, circumstances that pushed human consciousness to its absolute limits. The Zorlak research teams intercepting the data streams were experiencing their own crisis of understanding. What they interpreted as technological signals were actually complex emotional and cultural transmissions, a form of communication that existed between the quantum and the psychological. Dr. Cora Nungarai approached the research from a fundamentally different perspective. Her indigenous knowledge systems had always understood consciousness as something far more fluid than Western scientific models. The quantum interfaces were revealing what her ancestors had known for millennia: that consciousness was not a fixed state, but a dynamic, interconnected phenomenon. "We are not individuals," Cora explained to the research team, her fingers tracing intricate patterns on a bioresponsive interface. "We are a network, a living, breathing system of potential." The technological breakthrough came from an unlikely combination: Maria's trauma research, Cora's indigenous knowledge systems, Sergei Volkov's quantum psychology, and Kai Chen's mathematical modeling created a perfect storm of innovation. They discovered that human emotional states could be translated into a quantum energy signature that fundamentally challenged everything the Zorlak understood about intelligence and communication. Amir Naderi, the communication specialist, developed a translation matrix that was part language processor, part emotional interpreter. It could take the most complex human psychological states and transform them into a communication protocol that existed simultaneously as information, emotion, and pure potential. Imagine speaking in a language that is simultaneously a weapon, a healing mechanism, and a form of cultural exchange, Amir explained, his fingers dancing across quantum encryption interfaces. The Zorlak research teams began to experience something unprecedented. Their most advanced analysis systems were encountering data streams that refused to be categorized, emotional states that could simultaneously exist in multiple interpretative frameworks, communication protocols that were living, adaptive organisms. Lieutenant Commander Area Chen understood the deeper implications. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could be. Their research revealed that human consciousness had a quantum flexibility that the Zorlak's rigid, algorithmic intelligence could never comprehend. Emotional states weren't just psychological phenomena. They were complex computational systems that could adapt, transform, and communicate in ways that defied traditional understanding. Sergei Volkov's quantum psychology models suggested that human potential existed in a state of perpetual becoming. Not a fixed state, but a dynamic fluid system of infinite potential. The Thunder Soul battleship was becoming something more than a weapon. It was a living laboratory of human potential, a system that could simultaneously exist as a technological platform, a collective consciousness, and a form of distributed intelligence that challenged every known paradigm of understanding. Zorlak researchers watched in a combination of terror and fascination as their most advanced analysis systems began to break down. The data streams from the Thunder Soul were not just complex, they were fundamentally transformative. "We are witnessing the emergence of a new form of intelligence," Dr. Santos recorded in her research log. "Not human, not alien, something entirely unprecedented." The breakthrough wasn't just technological. It was a profound philosophical statement about the nature of consciousness, potential, and the infinite complexity of adaptive systems. As the Zorlak research teams struggled to comprehend these new data streams, humanity was preparing to rewrite the fundamental understanding of intelligence itself. The art of psychological warfare transformed into something beyond human comprehension. Deep within the Thunder Soul's neural interface chamber, Amir Naderi constructed what could only be described as emotional weaponry. His workstation was a labyrinth of quantum encryption protocols, cultural memory archives, and psychological transmission matrices that pulsed with a living intelligence. Amir's background was a tapestry of displacement and resilience. Born to Iranian refugees who had survived multiple geopolitical upheavals, he understood survival as an art form, a complex dance of adaptation, communication, and unexpected resilience. The first wave of psychological assault began not with violence, but with memory. Zorlak communication networks found themselves infiltrated by human experiences so complex, so fundamentally alien to their algorithmic understanding, that their processing systems began to fragment. It wasn't just data. It was raw, unfiltered human existence. Imagine receiving a communication that was simultaneously a street market in Marrakesh, the last moments of a child's laughter before a war, the defiant hope of a community rebuilding after a natural disaster. Memories that carried not just information, but entire emotional ecosystems. Dr. Cora Nungarai approached the psychological interface from her indigenous knowledge systems. For her people, memory wasn't a linear recording. It was a living, breathing entity that could transform and adapt. The quantum communication protocols became a form of cultural storytelling that existed beyond traditional language. "We are not attacking," Cora explained to the research team. "We are communicating in the most profound way possible." The Zorlak had conquered hundreds of civilizations using a standardized approach: identify cultural vulnerabilities, introduce systemic disruptions, eliminate resistance. Their strategy was a mathematical algorithm of cultural destruction. Humanity introduced something entirely unprecedented: radical empathy as a form of resistance. Lieutenant Commander Kai Chen discovered that human psychological states could be transmitted as complex quantum signatures that simultaneously existed as communication, weapon, and healing mechanism. The Thunder Soul's systems began to weaponize human complexity. A single transmission could contain the collective grief of a community recovering from generational trauma, the raw creative potential of urban street art, the mathematical precision of indigenous astronomical knowledge, the intricate emotional landscape of a multi-generational family. Zorlak analysis systems began to experience something impossible: emotional overflow. Their rigid computational models, designed to categorize and neutralize, found themselves confronted with a form of communication that refused to be parsed. Each transmission was a living, breathing ecosystem of human potential. Sergei Volkov's research into extreme psychological states came into full fruition. The psychological warfare wasn't about destruction. It was about radical transformation. Each communication carried the potential to fundamentally alter the receiver's understanding of existence. Grand strategists Axel Naga watched in growing horror as their most advanced communication networks began to destabilize. The transmissions weren't just complex, they were fundamentally transformative. Maria Santos monitored the psychological impact. The Thunder Soul wasn't just defending, it was offering the Zorlak a profound choice: transformation or destruction. The most terrifying weapon wasn't a physical weapon, it was human complexity itself. Amir's communication matrices began to introduce quantum uncertainty into the Zorlak's most fundamental communication protocols. Imagine a language that could simultaneously exist as information, emotion, and pure potential. A form of communication that could heal, destroy, and reimagine reality in the same moment. The psychological assault carried the weight of human history, every moment of resistance, every act of unexpected kindness, every instance of profound creativity. It was a communication that said, "We are not just surviving, we are becoming." Zorlak research teams found their most advanced analysis systems encountering data streams that refused categorization, emotional states that existed in multiple interpretative frameworks, communication protocols that were living, adaptive organisms. "We are offering them a choice," Arya Chen observed, watching the psychological transmissions. "Understand us, or be transformed by us." The battle had transformed. It was no longer about physical conquest. It was a profound philosophical confrontation about the nature of intelligence, potential, and existence itself. Humanity was not just resisting. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of communication, consciousness, and potential. The moment of realization came not with a weapon, but with a symphony of impossibility. Grand strategist Axel Naga's neural interface began to fracture, not through physical damage, but through a profound existential disruption. The Zorlak's collective consciousness had never encountered a force that could simultaneously exist as threat, communication, and transformative potential. Within the Thunder Soul's neural matrix, a complex narrative began to unfold. It wasn't just a strategic response, it was a living documentary of human existence. Dr. Sergei Volkov watched the psychological breakthrough with a scientist's precision and a poet's wonder. The communication matrices were transmitting something far beyond traditional understanding, a quantum storytelling that carried the weight of human complexity. The transmission began with a molecular biologist's discovery in a small laboratory in Nairobi. Her research on adaptive genetic responses to extreme environmental stress carried the seeds of a revolutionary understanding. Alongside her narrative came the story of a street artist in Sao Paulo whose murals captured the resilience of marginalized communities. A quantum physicist's breakthrough in a Buenos Aires research center intertwined with an indigenous elder's astronomical knowledge passed through generations of oral tradition. Each narrative thread was a quantum entanglement of human potential. Cora Nungarai understood this most profoundly. Her indigenous knowledge systems had always recognized consciousness as a living, breathing network, not a fixed state, but a dynamic system of infinite potential. "We are not explaining," she told the research team. "We are revealing." The Zorlak's most advanced analysis systems began to experience something unprecedented. Their computational models, designed to categorize and neutralize, encountered a form of communication that refused simplification. Lieutenant Commander Arya Chen recognized the deeper strategy. This wasn't just about survival. It was an invitation, a profound philosophical challenge to the Zorlak's understanding of intelligence, potential, and existence. Maria Santos monitored the psychological impact with medical precision. The Thunder Soul was offering the Zorlak a choice that went beyond traditional conflict: understand us, or be fundamentally transformed. Amirnadari's communication matrices introduced quantum uncertainty into the most fundamental Zorlak communication protocols. Imagine a language that could simultaneously exist as information, emotion, and pure potential. A form of communication that could heal, destroy, and reimagine reality in the same moment. The Zorlak leadership found themselves confronting a fundamental paradox. Their entire civilization was built on a model of hierarchical conquest, a mathematical approach to cultural integration that had worked across hundreds of galactic civilizations. Humanity introduced something entirely unprecedented: radical empathy as a form of resistance. Each transmission carried the complexity of human existence, the mathematical precision of a scientist, the raw emotional landscape of a street revolution, the quiet determination of a community rebuilding after disaster. It was a communication that said, "We are not just surviving, we are becoming." Grand strategist Axel Nagat experienced a moment of profound vulnerability. The Zorlak's collective consciousness, which had conquered civilizations with mathematical precision, encountered a force that defied their most fundamental understanding of intelligence. Kai Chen's quantum navigation systems revealed the deeper truth. The conflict had transformed from a physical confrontation to a profound philosophical dialogue about the nature of consciousness, potential, and existence. The Thunder Soul was not just a weapon system. It was a living library of human potential, a dynamic, adaptive network that carried the collective experience of a species that refused to be defined by linear limitations. Zorlak research teams watched in a combination of terror and fascination as their most advanced analysis systems began to dissolve. The data streams were not just complex, they were fundamentally transformative. "We are witnessing the emergence of a new form of intelligence," Dr. Santos recorded in her research log. "Not human, not alien, something entirely unprecedented." The turning point wasn't a moment of victory. It was an invitation, a profound challenge to reimagine the very understanding of intelligence, potential, and existence. Humanity was not just resisting. They were offering the Zorlak a fundamental choice: evolve or be left behind in the quantum wake of human potential. The negotiation chamber defied every known concept of diplomatic space. Suspended in a quantum-stabilized environment, the meeting point existed simultaneously as physical space, holographic projection, and pure informational landscape. Captain Aria Chen stood at the center, or rather, her consciousness stood, while her physical form remained integrated with the Thunder Soul's neural matrix. Grand strategist Axel Naga appeared as a fractal projection, a living mathematical equation that shifted and breathed with alien complexity. Traditional communication protocols had long since dissolved, replaced by a method of exchange that was part language, part emotional transmission, part pure potential. Dr. Maria Santos managed the psychological interface, a delicate orchestration of human complexity and alien understanding. Her role wasn't translation. It was transformation. "We are not here to conquer," Aria began, her communication a living tapestry of human experience. "We are here to propose a fundamental reimagining of galactic potential." The negotiation unfolded across multiple dimensions. Each statement was simultaneously a historical record, a psychological profile, a mathematical theorem, and a cultural archive. Humanity wasn't presenting an argument. They were offering a living, breathing ecosystem of possibility. Amirnadari's communication matrices wove an intricate narrative, stories of human survival intertwined with scientific breakthroughs, cultural resilience, and unexpected moments of profound connection. A quantum physicist's breakthrough in Buenos Aires danced with an indigenous astronomer's celestial knowledge. The last moments of a community rebuilding after a natural disaster merged with a molecular biologist's discovery of adaptive genetic responses. Cora Nungarai understood this approach most profoundly. For her people, negotiation was never about winning. It was about finding a new way of existing together. The Zorlak leadership experienced something unprecedented. Their entire civilization had been built on a model of hierarchical conquest, a mathematical approach to cultural integration that had worked across hundreds of galactic civilizations. Humanity offered something entirely different, a model of coexistence that was fluid, adaptive, and fundamentally unpredictable. Sergei Volkov monitored the psychological landscape. The negotiation wasn't just an exchange of information. It was a living, breathing transformation of consciousness. Kai Chen's quantum navigation systems revealed the deeper strategy. Each moment of the negotiation existed in multiple potential states, a diplomatic approach that was simultaneously a weapon, a healing mechanism, and a form of cultural exchange. The Zorlak began to understand that humanity was offering something far more valuable than submission or resistance. They were proposing a new model of galactic interaction, one based on dynamic potential rather than hierarchical control. Imagine a civilization, Aria explained. Her communication a living network of human experiences, where potential is not measured by technological advancement, but by the ability to adapt, to transform, to understand. The negotiation chamber became a living documentary of human existence. Scientific breakthroughs danced with cultural narratives. Moments of profound loss intertwined with unexpected creativity. Mathematical precision merged with raw emotional complexity. Grand strategist Selnaga's computational matrices began to experience something impossible, a form of understanding that went beyond traditional information processing. This wasn't just an exchange. It was a fundamental reimagining of intelligence itself. The Zorlak leadership found themselves confronting a paradox. Their entire civilization was built on a model of quantifiable control. Humanity introduced a system of potential that refused to be categorized, measured, or controlled. Maria Santos watched the psychological interface with medical precision. The Thunder Soul was offering the Zorlak more than a diplomatic resolution. It was presenting a fundamental choice: evolve or become obsolete. Amir's communication matrices introduced quantum uncertainty into the most fundamental Zorlak understanding of interaction. Each transmission carried the weight of human complexity, the quiet determination of a community, the mathematical precision of a scientist, the raw emotional landscape of cultural resilience. The negotiation became a living entity, part communication, part transformation, part pure potential. The aftermath was not a victory, but a fundamental reconfiguration of galactic existence. Eduardo Rodriguez took his final breath as the transformation unfolded. His daughter Elena watched through the quantum interface of the Thunder Soul, understanding that her father's lifetime of preparation had culminated in this moment. A revolution that transcended physical conflict. The Zorlak civilization began to dismantle its own historical infrastructure. Not through force, but through a profound reimagining of their collective potential. Research facilities that had once been dedicated to conquest transformed into collaborative exploration centers. Their hierarchical communication networks dissolved, replaced by adaptive, fluid systems of knowledge exchange. Dr. Cora Nungarai understood this process most deeply. Transformation was not an endpoint, but a continuous journey of becoming. The galactic community watched in astonishment. Humanity had not conquered the Zorlak. They had offered them a path to a fundamentally different way of existing. Scientific outposts that had once been sites of militaristic expansion became centers of collaborative research. The rigid computational matrices of Zorlak society began to develop what could only be described as creativity. Sergei Volkov documented the psychological metamorphosis. It wasn't just a technological shift, but a profound evolutionary leap. The Zorlak were learning to exist beyond their predetermined computational limitations. Amir Naderi's communication research revealed the deeper transformation. Their quantum communication protocols had introduced something unprecedented, a form of intelligence that valued adaptability over control, potential over predetermined outcomes. The Thunder Soul battleship became something more than a weapon system. It transformed into a living archive of human potential, a mobile research center, a diplomatic platform, a testament to human complexity. Each crew member carried the weight of this transformation. Maria Santos saw it in the medical research that began to emerge, collaborative studies that merged Zorlak biological understanding with human adaptive capabilities. Kai Chen observed it in the new approach to quantum navigation, systems that valued exploration over conquest. Planetary ecosystems that had once been targeted for resource extraction became sites of collaborative research. The Zorlak's advanced terraforming technologies, previously used for military expansion, now worked in harmony with planetary restoration efforts. Elena Rodriguez stood as a bridge between worlds. Her father's final project, the Thunder Soul, had become more than a weapon. It was a living philosophy, a method of existing that challenged every previous understanding of intelligence, potential, and coexistence. The first collaborative research stations emerged in previously contested star systems. Human researchers worked alongside Zorlak scientists, their different approaches creating something entirely unprecedented. Mathematical precision merged with creative intuition. Technological advancement danced with cultural wisdom. Grand strategist Sel Maga, once a symbol of conquering methodology, now led initiatives exploring the potential of collaborative intelligence. Their computational matrices had learned something impossible, the value of uncertainty, of potential, of becoming. Cultural exchanges became the new form of galactic interaction, not through forced integration, but through a genuine desire to understand. Museums emerged that were living, breathing entities, part historical archive, part ongoing dialogue between civilizations. The quantum communication networks that had once been weapons became platforms of unprecedented exchange. Scientific breakthroughs, cultural narratives, moments of profound human and Zorlak experience flowed through systems that valued complexity over simplification. Humanity had not just survived. They had introduced a fundamentally new way of existing, a model of interaction based on dynamic potential, collaborative intelligence, and the infinite complexity of conscious experience. The Thunder Soul battleship remained as a mobile testament to this transformation, not a weapon of war, but a living research center that continued to explore the boundaries of possibility. Elena Rodriguez looked out at the transformed galactic landscape. Her father's final words echoed through the quantum interface. We are not just surviving. We are becoming. The universe watched and listened, a living, breathing potential waiting to unfold.